And the big question is, what happens next after you are done with your studies? There's a huge need, okay, for heavy tech roles, not just in Ireland but just across Europe. As long as you've been on them for 5 years continuously, you can become a citizen of Ireland and try to minimize that pressure of having to make all the money to pay your fees and to pay your accommodation, in addition to having to figure out how to stay back in the country as a young professional. Okay. Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Dinma. I am currently here living in Ireland, and I love to share everything about setting up a new life abroad, from the highs to the lows to the costs and everything in between. So if this is something you want to hear and something you love to research or learn about, definitely subscribe to my channel and you are most welcome. So although I didn't come into Ireland as a student, I have had friends over the years that have come in as students, friends that have experienced sort of like what the life is transitioning from a student to residency here in Ireland, and some of them even on to becoming Irish citizens. So I have asked a lot of questions and I have done a lot of research to ensure that I bring you guys this video. So if you have seen the title of this video, we are going to be talking about transitioning from a student visa to permanent residency in Ireland. Basically answering the big question that I always get asked on my channel, on my Telegram group, which is, can I stay back in Ireland after my studies? Now, talking about the Telegram group, if you are someone who is looking to move to Ireland, who has just moved to Ireland, and you're looking to connect with other Africans, other Nigerians, living now currently in Ireland, who are probably students who came in as working professionals, or who basically just like moved to Ireland one way or the other, you should definitely consider joining the Telegram group. I will be leaving the link in the description below. Click on it and feel free to join. One thing I love the most about that group is we have gotten to a point where everyone seems to love to support each other, answer each other's questions, and find ways to connect with each other. So if this is something you're looking forward to, definitely click the link in my description and get connected to that group. Now let's go back to answering the big question. Now you've come into the country, you have gotten your student visa, and you've come in as a student, whether as an undergrad or as a postgraduate student, studying for your master's specifically. And the big question is, what happens next after you are done with your studies? Now, most students are, eligible to get a stamp 1G, okay? A stamp 1G is a stamp that allows you to stay in the country, depending on the duration of your course, for either 1 or 2 years after your studies. Now, there are some criteria for getting a stamp 1G, which I'm going to put on the screen. So these are the things that you have to put top of mind. The only thing about the stamp 1G is because it is for 1 year or 2 years, depending, as the case may be. Basically, the clock starts to tick from the moment you get that visa, and then it becomes scary. One major challenge I'm sure that most current students who are about to round up their program will tell you is the limited sponsorship. Most companies are not willing to sponsor you or willing to commit basically to sponsoring you, even if they're willing to give you a job. And even for most companies, like it already kicks you off the application process when they feel like, oh, you need some form of sponsorship. Now I say some form of sponsorship because there are different forms of sponsorship in Ireland. Okay, you can either get a general work permit or a CSCP or any other visa depending on the industry that you're in. But there is a catch, okay? The company that you want to work for has to give you a letter or has to consent to being able to sponsor you. Now, for instance, let's say getting a general work permit, might take a cost of 1,000 euros. And you say, oh, I have the 1,000 euros. And I want to get this permit, okay? I have a job that falls under this permit and I want to get this permit. Here is the 1,000 euros. Even though you're supposed to be able to do that, you need a letter from the organizations, and there are certain requirements that organization has to meet. So even if to an extent you can self-sponsor yourself, you are not entirely self-sponsoring yourself, if you get what I mean. Because if the company, and I've heard in the past of people who said that I have a company that I'm working for and I wanted to get sponsorship for myself, I wanted to go pay for this, I wanted to fill the form and do everything, it was fine, but they didn't want to give me a letter. And this usually happens sometimes because this company doesn't meet the criteria for actually sponsoring an international student, international professional, or whatever you might call it. Okay, so those are things to put in mind. It is the fact that jobs are here in Ireland, but the sponsorship factor, it's a very tricky thing. The second major challenge with transitioning from an international student phase, or transitioning from being an international student to getting a work visa, is the fact that you are under so much pressure. Okay, like I said, after you're done, I think it's called the post-study in the UK, after you're done in Ireland with your studies, you might be under certain criteria eligible to get a stamp 1G. But now the issue with that is that stamp 1G is usually limited to 1 or 2 years depending on your course, and with this timeline, you always find that people are under so much pressure to either find something or have to leave the country. Okay, and it sounds like 1 or 2 years, but trust me, like, it can be a lot of pressure. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they really just switched off, from everybody from the world. They were stuck on their laptop, stuck in their room, trying to find something fast, and that can be so detrimental to your health and your mind space, if you get what I mean. So that pressure is definitely a challenge that you probably want to think about. The third challenge that most students have said that they've had over time is just the changing immigration rules, ever evolving, ever switching, ever changing. Okay, I have heard from some people that there are other options in terms of starting off a business or doing something else after your studies, but those rules are ever changing, they're ever adjusting, so you need to stay abreast of all of those rules. Keep yourself updated with whatever is going on in that space, in terms of what you require to transition from a stamp 1G to a stamp 4, what you require to transition from a stamp 1G to a critical skills employment permit, or what you actually require to even transition from being a student to whichever of this path you eventually take. Okay, so that's basically what I would say about that. Final challenge I would say is the mental and emotional pressure. Now, even though I've spoken about pressure again, I think this is just me, another way of saying pressure again. Okay, there is that tendency to feel a lot of pressure, and your mind and your emotions are just always thinking about the fact that you have to get this sponsorship and you have to get it now, or it will be like all the investments you made on your education, on your dream of staying for longer and working as a professional has just dropped. Okay, so there's a need to always keep your mind in check, and your physical health in check, just to make sure that you are not under that major pressure. I know that one girl once said that it almost felt like she was holding her breath, waiting for when a sponsorship job would come. It did come eventually, but that period for her was just, it was a scar, I would say, to an extent that she just couldn't forget. So definitely prepare your mind for whatever comes, because I know that at the end of the day you would go through it, but it's just good to prepare your mind for the fact that there's a possibility that there will be a delay, but delay is not denial, okay? Now, something worth talking about is, how do people make it work? I know I've said all of that stuff about how crazy, how difficult it can be, but is there a way to make it work? Yes, okay. I have met a lot of people who have come through the same pathway and they have made it work, and they're here 5, 6, 7 years after, and they're even citizens of the country and they're doing fine. So do not worry your mind. Do not worry. Now, some of the things you can do to make sure that you are ahead of everything and you're kind of fighting to make sure you're in the best place and position to make it work is to, one, ensure that before you come into the country to take a course, you know that that course is valuable in Ireland. I have done a video about different countries and kind of like what their focus is on. Ireland is very heavy on tech. There are a lot of tech companies, although, you know, they're having layoffs here and there, but it is amazing to work in a tech company, to be honest. So yeah, tech is big in Ireland. There is a little bit, like a lot also happening on the healthcare side, the pharma companies, you know, the med tech companies and all of that. And you know, you can also look at, you know, the consultancy firms, okay, the likes of the big fours and all of those companies. Those kind of spaces are booming a lot here in Ireland, and there's a huge need, okay, for heavy tech roles, not just in Ireland but just across Europe. So you want to make sure that some of the courses that you're taking have somehow fit into that ecosystem and you are not just oblivious, okay? And now, if you have come into the country and you're doing another course that you think doesn't exactly align or wouldn't be like exactly valuable at the moment, and you're looking for a way to kind of switch it up a little, I would recommend upskilling, okay? So upskilling just basically means that you take side courses, little courses, take opportunities, take free courses, you know, just gather on certificates that kind of give you that additional push and that step ahead in the industry. Do your research and find the courses that can bring you up to speed in whatever you're doing in your space. I have had to take courses about my space, okay, about the telecom space, about the sales environment, business to business sales environment, just to understand, you know, kind of like what ways to upskill within that environment. And trust me, this helps you a lot. So spend your study time also, you know, trying to create that balance between upskilling and getting your certificate at the end of the day. The next thing I would say is definitely tailor your CV to fit this space, okay? I have also, I think one of my videos I also mentioned that in different countries they seem to prefer different, you know, types of CVs. Some places prefer a one-pager, some other countries prefer a two-pager CV. Some countries wouldn't mind you having your photo on your CV. Some countries would prefer you do not put your passport photo on your CV. So those are the kind of things that you want to think about, and also optimize your CV to ensure that you are projecting the skills, you're projecting the activities that you're doing, your achievements, you are projecting numbers, okay? You're showing your achievements in numbers, how you retained revenue, how you've grown revenue, how you have added to the bottom line in general. So, and if you do not have work experience, it would take me to my next point, okay? Internships. take every single opportunity from the moment you step into the country. Take every single opportunity to intern, volunteer if you have to. I know that volunteering means no much pay because they just give you like a tiny stipend, but if you have to volunteer or attach yourself to someone who is already doing something within your field, this is something you might want to look at. Okay, definitely consider volunteering, consider interning with people just to build that experience. Okay, if you're someone who doesn't have experience already, you need to build the experience. And to be honest, like, I have heard from a lot of people who have schooled here in Ireland, they have said a lot of their experience from before was just pretty much shoved away. Okay, it was taken as if, okay, even if you have 10, 15 years experience, they kind of feel like you're coming as an entry level grad into the company. As much as that is very, very annoying, it can be a good opportunity for you to get yourself into graduate, they used to call them graduate training programs back home, but I think they're called graduate programs, just graduate programs here. And do not be afraid to sometimes take a step back to take a step forward, if you have to, but definitely look for ways to build that experience. And as much as you're trying to make money on the side, ensure that somehow, some way, even if it's an online remote work, you are building the experience to make your CV look good. Okay, and then the next thing I want to say is something I've said in my previous video before, is definitely network. Okay, on LinkedIn, at events, go for so many events and not just go there. Don't just go and show up, because it's networking only when you speak to them and they know you and they know your name and you're exchanging some form of contact, LinkedIn profile, something like that. It is not networking when you go to the career event and just stand, look around, take pens and books and papers that are branded and just walk away and go back home. That is not networking. Okay, it's not networking when you just go and write your name on the list where a bunch of people have already written their name on the table and you think that you've put your foot forward. No, that's not networking. Networking is looking for the person who is in charge of a stand or who is a speaker at an event and pitching yourself to them. In fact, I think you should have an elevator pitch for yourself for any time, because any time you can meet anybody. Okay, you can literally meet them at a football pitch or at Pilates class, whatever. You can meet anybody anytime. An elevator pitch is, you know, this is me, this is what I do, and this is how I can help you. Simple and short. Okay, so definitely have yourself an elevator pitch and network, meet people, connect with them on LinkedIn. If you're someone who is very big on putting yourself just in the right space or right place to possibly potentially become a professional living in Ireland after your studies, you kind of want to consider, you kind of want to pay attention to that when you're picking your school. Okay, is this school a school that produces people in the right place or the right standing to get a job? I'm looking for a good way to put that, but I think there are places where you can find that result or that, you know, analysis online. I'm going to try to put one on the screen or put a link below. Probably check that out, and you should probably do a research on your school and make sure that you're not just going to a school that isn't well recognized for bringing out good products, if you get what I mean. Like I previously mentioned, there are two major visas here in Ireland that anybody who is coming in to Ireland can use as a pathway to become a professional working in Ireland, or a pathway through to permanent residency, which is stamp 4, because stamp 4 is like permanent residency. Getting a stamp 4 basically means that you can work in Ireland without any form of sponsorship, you can switch jobs, you can start a business, you can live legally in Ireland, okay, and find your own means of income, if you get what I mean. There are two major visas that allows you to stay in Ireland as a young professional and work in Ireland. Permits, it's called a permit, okay, two major permits, let me correct myself, two major permits. One is the general permit, general work permit, and the second is the critical skills employment permit. Of course, the criteria for these two permits are totally different. But the good thing is, as a student, you are eligible after your studies to get any of these permits, even though you are still on your stamp 1G, which is like a post-study visa. You are still eligible to take any of these permits. But of course, there are different criterias. Some of the general criterias being that you need to get a job first of all. You need to get, you know, some kind of assurance from the employer. For instance, for the critical skills employment permits, there has to be an assurance that you're going to be working with them for at least 2 years. You have to earn at least 64,000 euros per year. If you are not if you're not within the, I think it's called the critical skills list. And for the general work permits, you know, you need to have your role not be on the ineligible list, and you need to earn at least a particular amount. I think 30 something thousand or 20 something thousand. That I need to confirm. But just to give you an idea of all the criteria, I will be putting a link in the description for you to go look at that criteria, because that needs a whole other video to kind of like explain what the criteria are for each of them. But generally, you need to get a job, and there are professional limits, role limits. There are limits on, you know, what you should earn for each of the permits, and there's a cost for getting that permit. Just that, okay? But do know that there's a possibility of getting this permit if you are very lucky to get a job before you leave school, and they're willing to sponsor you to get any of these permits. Then you can get a letter from them, get sponsored on in terms of like paying for the permit, you know, different levels of sponsorship, and you can stay back in Ireland and sort of like work as a professional. And depending on which permit you get, you are likely to get a stamp for in like 2 or 5 years. So for the critical skills employment permit, you can get your stamp for in 2 years, and or slightly less, because you can apply for your stamp for at 21 months of being in Ireland. And for the general employment permit, you have to wait 5 years to be able to get your stamp for, which is equivalent to a permanent residency. And the beautiful thing is that for all of the permits, as long as you've been on them for 5 years continuously, you can become a citizen of Ireland, which is beautiful. Okay, so that is just to give you high level kind of like what it is. Let me know in the comment section if you want to see a video about the permits. You know, I have done a previous interview with a great YouTuber on this YouTube space before about those permits and kind of like how they work. I can put that link in the description box below. But if you want something more updated, because that was like about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now, if you want something more updated, I could share with you kind of what exactly that pathway looks like. The beautiful thing of when you get permanent residency, like I said before, is you do not need sponsorship. Once you are there, after your 2 years mark on a CSCP, or after your 5 years mark on general work permit, you are a free bird. You can do whatever you want. So it is something you want to look forward to as, you know, as a student coming to Ireland, and some hope that you want to give yourself, because yes, it is possible and it can happen. So now, from a big sister or little sister to a brother or a sister, try to minimize that pressure of having to make all the money to pay your fees and to pay your accommodation, in addition to, you know, having to figure out how to stay back in the country as a young professional. Okay, pay as much as your school fees. The good thing is, for some schools, if you're coming to do your master's, they would ask you to pay for your full fees before you can start your course at all. That I know. From some other schools, I'm sure they allow you to pay in installments. And, you know, with accommodation, you probably want to pay for it every month when you come. As much as you can, try to ensure that you have enough money set aside for accommodation. Try to ensure that you clear off your school fees. Try to reduce that pressure from yourself, because all you like, craziest thing that could happen to you is that you have pressure coming from trying to get a job and stay back, and you still have pressure from clearing off your fees and your rent and all of that stuff. I would say if you're working, probably just work as a student for the bare minimum needs like power, groceries, and basic stuff, just so that you can focus on what is really important, which is getting yourself done with school and getting yourself into the workforce as a young professional. That is just my 2 cents. That is my advice from a big sister or a sister to a brother or another sister. I definitely wish anyone who is looking to move to Ireland as an international student, or who has just moved to Ireland as an international student, the very, very best. I know that this journey can seem daunting, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you keep pushing, you definitely get to where you want to be. And in the next few years, you're just going to be like, So till next time, I'm sorry girl, Dinma. Bye.